Good afternoon. In order to avoid drowning you with more material that won't be on that might be on midterm, I'm going to lecture instead today on Lab 2. I realize that your focus is not entirely on Lab 2, but by 4 o'clock on Friday it will. So my plan is to talk in general, first an overview of the Chinese migration experience, especially how it pertains to Chinese in California, and I'm hoping that's a useful background in reading or rereading Chapter 3 of Takaki, which goes into a great deal more detail than we will today about the Chinese in California. And then secondly, we'll talk a good deal about the lab itself, the data that you have, how to use data to investigate questions of isolation or segregation, and so forth. But first, I want to start with the Chinese. And last time, remember that we talked about Germans and Irish, and how those two groups kind of archetypal migration flows. The Germans representing this rural to rural migration flow of people involved in agriculture in Europe, coming to the United States, doing very much the same thing and radically attempting to conserve their old ways of life. We contrasted that with the Irish, who were largely rural in Ireland, but wound up much more in urban settings in the United States. And we'll have more to say about the Irish later. We're in a sense, we're jumping a little bit ahead of time. But the Chinese represent a new kind of migration. They're trendsetters, as it were. And the kind of migration that the Chinese practice we call labor migration. And this is something that the Chinese will do in starting in 1849, the gold rush. But by the end of the 19th century, that's mostly what, I shouldn't say mostly, it's a much more popular kind of immigration. The characteristics are chiefly that the migrant does not intend to stay. And that becomes possible because transportation costs fall. But it also implies that it will also make more sense if you don't intend to stay for single people to come. In the early 19th century, most of the migration is families. That's particularly true of the rural to rural kinds of migration. It's very much a family decision. Family in Europe is confronted with these new capitalist realities, and they decide that they're better off, as Dr. Duden pointed out, they can, if they have 6,000 Prussian thaler, they can simply uproot and come in and find greater happiness on the banks of the Missouri River. This is still labor migration. We'll see is still a family decision. It's not typically an individual decision, I think, but it's a strategy that families will pursue. They will send a member of the family to the United States to earn money. The hope that they will either they will both remit money while they're there and then eventually come back to make their lives in their original country. It does not always work out that way. Many labor migrants wind up staying, and that's true of the Chinese as well as it will be true of Greeks and Italians later, who were also identified as practicing very much this kind of migration. The Chinese also set another important precedent that they are going to be the first group that is excluded from the right to migrate solely based on ethnicity, and that, like other characteristics of the Chinese migration, will also be copied in the 20th century by other groups. That was kind of a backwards way of saying it. The United States Congress will prohibit Chinese from migrating to the United States in 1882, and they'll follow in the 1920s with legislation that does the same to Southern and Eastern Europeans. That's the long-term story we will talk about later. But the point is the Chinese are very different from the groups that we talked about before. Their situation is different. We'll talk about that shortly. But in a strange way, they're leaders. So what they do is their experience ultimately mirrored an experience of other groups that come later. Okay. So an important point about Chinese migration to California is that it's part of a very long-standing migratory tradition, if you will, among Chinese, particularly among Chinese from these two provinces, Guangdong and Fujian. China is a country full of mountain ranges, and so this region here, Fujian and Guangdong, they're on one side of the mountain range, and as a result, communication between Fujian, Guangdong, and all the rest of the other places in Asia is easier by water than any other way. In a lot of ways, these two provinces are kind of distinct from the rest of China, at least in the very early periods when we're talking about the 14th century to the 19th century. The result is that, not surprisingly, they engage in a lot of trade with all the various islands and other landmasses in Asia. And over time, Chinese communities have formed in all of these places that are shown as dark on the map. Okay. So there's already by the 19th century, there's considerable Chinese diaspora in Asia. And these communities are still in many cases distinct, and that shows up when there is political unrest. Often, if the Chinese community is particularly successful, they are often singled out for violence during difficult political times. During the 19th century, the field expanded. Partially this simply because transportation got cheaper, but there are also a bunch of geopolitical reasons which I'll go into in a moment. But instead of just migrating into the Asian regions here, the 19th century sees this Chinese diaspora expanding to Australia, into Europe to some extent, very much to San Francisco and Hawaii. These are bits that will be covered in the Takaki book, and also less well known to the Caribbean, to Cuba and to Peru, to many of the sugar islands. And part of the reason, as we'll see in a moment, is because in 1833 the British abolished slavery among their Caribbean possessions. Right. Okay. So briefly, the conditions for increasing immigration are among the conditions, I should say, are these kinds of things are changing. There's increasing population. This is a story we've heard before, right, about the 19th century. And in the Pearl River Delta region, this is right, Pearl River empties right around Hong Kong, so it's right inside of the Guangdong province. And today it's a big economic driver of China. It's a very dynamic region. And in the 19th century, we saw its population density growing quite considerably, from 2,000 per square mile to 2,500 or so. And that's a significant increase, but that's a high density to start with. That's a lot of people, particularly in a situation that's still largely agricultural. Hong Kong, of course, has higher densities than that, but they don't do agriculture there. Against this backdrop of rising population, we have European imperialism. This isn't entirely new, but it takes on, but you should say in the 19th century, the imperialists get more powerful with respect to China. It's a long-standing problem for the British in trading with China that they have a lot of problems finding things that the Chinese want. And that goes back for Europe all the way to the early modern period that we talked about before. There are a lot of things in Asia that Europeans want, lots of spices and silk and luxury goods and so on. But there's not a lot that the Chinese want from Europe. This is one of the reasons we think that Chinese didn't launch lots of expeditions of exploration. They weren't as interested. Britain solves this problem in the 1830s with opium. They grow opium in India, and they sell it in China. Not too surprisingly, the Chinese don't like that. And war breaks out when they try to stop it. The British ultimately win the war in 1842, and part of the settlement involves both cash and a long-term lease in Hong Kong, which came due in 1997. So some of you may recall 1997 when Hong Kong was given back to the Chinese. It was at the end of the opium war that the British got Hong Kong. So this led to further difficulties for peasants. In order to pay those cash settlements, that required increased taxes once again. So peasants in China are becoming more miserable, and at the same time, there is a sudden increase in demand for labor elsewhere in the world. And part of that is the 800,000 slaves that were freed no longer care to grow sugar in the British Caribbean. And there are other enterprises too. Remember, the Industrial Revolution is starting, so there's lots of demand for metals and for agricultural goods. This is what begins the coolie trade. Coolie trade begins in India, I believe, right after, I think it's early 1834, right after the slaves are freed, and it expands after the Opium War expands to China, and the British import what's called coolie labor to the West Indies and to Peru and to Cuba and to several other places. Coolies, I think, are essentially indentured servants. That's the tradition. They sign a contract, and in return for labor for a period of time, they get passage to a place where they can work, and presumably some amount of money. Of course, the deals would vary. A lot of coolie labor was not voluntary. Lots of treachery and kidnapping involved in this trade, and mortality rates are appalling. The term coolie is used in the United States, in California in particular. They refer to Chinese labor as coolie labor, but we should be clear about it that that's not what's going on. The Chinese who come to California are not indentured servants in this sense. It's hard to say that they are completely free because they typically do incur debts in order for their passage, and there's an institution known as the Six Companies that make sure that they can't get back on a ship until their debts are paid. So there is a structure here that's not entirely free, but it's much more voluntary, and it's not kidnapped. These aren't people who are kidnapped. Yes. Right, mainly not to Europe, but to places in Asia and the Caribbean, places where slavery had taken place before. Right, not the United States. It would have been illegal for one thing, but in any case, it is not done. Right. Incidentally, the word coolie, by strange coincidence, means day laborer in Hindi Urdu. That's thought to be its origin, but it also has a meaning in Chinese languages, which is translated into bitter strength. So this is a kind of interesting coincidence. There's one of the reasons that the word is caught on and is used both by Chinese and English speakers. Turning now to California in particular, we have 3 censuses. Therefore, we'll talk about 3 periods. It's in some ways arbitrary because really I'm doing this only because this is census data. This is what we know. But in 1860, this is a period. Well, sorry, the aftermath of the gold rush. California becomes a state only in 1850. So 1860 is the first census that has California in it. And we see that California has roughly all of the Chinese population, about 35,000, and that constitutes about 9% of California's population. Okay? So California then has roughly 350,000 people in it, which is, what is that? A little bit less than what you find in Alameda County today, I think, like that. This makes sense because there's no railroad yet in 1860. So getting to California is not particularly easy. The overland route is treacherous. Many people choose to get to California from the East Coast by sailing around South America. Right? So the population is small. The gold rush is on, so it's growing as fast as it can given those constraints. But what's important is that where the density of the Chinese population is shown by the intense red colors there. And so not too surprisingly, during the gold rush, you would find the Chinese where the gold was. That's why they came, and that's where they would be. Now we'll have something to say about the conditions in the gold rush in a later lecture. But what I want to show this, what I'm showing you this for now, is to show that over the decades, the gold rush doesn't last all that long. After the gold rush, there's a period of building railroads, and then there's a period when California essentially settles down to be largely an agricultural state after the railroads are here, with some industry in San Francisco. And what's happening in this period is that the Chinese population is moving from where they start in the gold fields. There's work in the Central Valley. There's work clearing land reclamation, draining swamps, and so forth. There's work on railroads. But ultimately, although this map is hard to see because San Francisco is so small, by 1880, the period when we have data for your lab, 30% of the population in San Francisco is Chinese. So over this period, we see the Chinese as a declining percentage of California's population. But remember, California is growing like crazy, and so the Chinese population is also growing like crazy. 3 times as big here in 1880 as it is in 1860, twice as big in California. But relative to the whole, it's small. It's only 7.5%. Right? But it's large in a couple of ways. And the first way it's large is it's largely urban. And so if you're in San Francisco, you're going to notice a significant Chinese population in 1880. And there's another sense in which it's large, and that is if we look only at people who are in the labor force. So this is a mosaic plot. It's called a mosaic plot. It's For our purposes, it's really just a bar plot where the widths of the bars have meaning. And this is California's tending to show California's population age 15 to 65. So that's essentially the workforce. These people who would be working. It's, I know that 14-year-olds will probably be working, and so will 67-year-olds, but the census only asked occupation information from people over 15. So I adopted their standards. And I'm not sure why it's got up to 65. I think it may not be very many people over 65 at this point. But nonetheless, we can think of this as the workforce. And you can see that in terms of the workforce, even though in 1880 we're talking only about 7.5% of the population, the Chinese are the second largest component by place of birth of the labor force. Right? Largest is the United States, people born in the United States. The third largest is other. Okay? But close behind other are the Irish and the Germans, the British and the Canadians. Right? Okay? And the overall size of these bars, it's the width that I'm looking at here. Okay? So this is the second widest bar. You can think about area of these squares as representing the proportion of the whole population. So 40% of the workforce are people born in the United States. Many of them will be the children of Irish, Germans, British, or Canadian immigrants. Very, very few, if any, probably none. I think it's safe to say none will be the children of Chinese immigrants at this point, because the first Chinese immigrants show up in 1849. So it's theoretically possible, but very, very few. So this is large. The United States is largely white. We're talking largely about a white population here. Blacks would be included, but there will be very few blacks in California at this time as well, partially because the state constitution prohibits it. And that's another story we'll get to later. So even though they're a small population, they are significant in terms of their urbanization, and they're significant in terms of their representation in the workforce. The other striking thing about this graph is what? More men, quite a lot. It's roughly 90% male. And that's characteristic of labor migration, but it's extreme even for labor migrations. I don't know of other groups that, any sizable group that has this skewed of sex ratio. But that's also something that causes fear among the white population in California at this time. And so I'm saying it's a population that sticks out in a lot of ways. And is that a question? Yes, this is what we understand, and I think that will become clear when you read Takaki. That was generally the intention. It's very expensive for Chinese to migrate to the U.S. The situation in China is very dire. After the Opium Wars, stability of the Qing dynasty deteriorates quite considerably. There are rebellions, particularly bloody as the Taiping Rebellion in the 1850s, that may have killed as many as 25 million people. So China is an impoverished and very difficult place. One of the survival strategies of families is to send one of their members to the United States. But again, typically they don't intend them to stay. They intend them to send money and come back. And so, yeah, that justifies sending single men, is what's typically the case. As you'll certainly see from reading Takaki and from the later lectures about the Chinese, that these characteristics, their urbanness, their maleness, and their willingness to work, led to a stereotype that was very frightening to native white workers at this time. This cartoon is, I think, a very good illustration of a lot of the fears, and there's a lot of details in this that we'll be touching on later. We'll certainly see this cartoon again. What do you notice first? Look at this cartoon. What do you see? Yes. Yes, he does, doesn't he? He is indeed taking over. He's an industrious guy with how many arms? Yeah. And look at the things. Look at the things that he's doing here. What do you see? You see sewing back here. This is cigar making. Samuel Gompertz is a cigar maker. He's the head of the Cigar Makers Union, and he has some really choice things to say about Chinese people, which we'll learn about later. But this is one of the surprisingly important industries in San Francisco, where the Chinese make inroads that are particularly frightening to the labor movement. What else? What else do you see? Ah, that's right. Wow, good eyes. That's right. It says to China. There. So there's that kind of mercantilist fear that the Chinese will make money and they'll send it home. There's a lot of ranting at this time that the Chinese are willing to live on wages that are too low for white people, and that allows them to send apparently vast sums back. It's very far from the truth, as again you read in Takaki. They are not sending vast sums back. In fact, most of the Chinese are really caught in a cycle of poverty. Many have a lot of difficulty. They wind up saying because they can't pay off their debt that they incurred to get here. So this is mythical, but there's a nationalist, mercantilist flavor to that. The idea that it's somehow disloyal for them to make money and send it to China. What else do you see? It's interesting. Yes. Oh, very good. Yes, these are indeed unemployed, and that's part of the story. Again, as we'll see in California, particularly after 1869, before the railroads, before the transcontinental railroad is complete, California's got a kind of captive market. If you're in California, you've got to buy what's there, and it's very